we really entered the age of micromedia, where every individual and brand is a media outlet, whether they know it or not. So everybody listening to this podcast right now, companies, nonprofits, et cetera, are all media outlets today. Again, whether they recognize that or not. And so what they have the power to do now is to go around gatekeepers that used to guard access to ink in newspapers or the airwaves on a radio program or a TV show. And now they can go right around those traditional gatekeepers and get directly to their audience. The way that we think about that is some people that are listening to this podcast may just influence a few hundred people via a Facebook profile or a Twitter account. Other people are influencing tens of thousands of people. And so it's this idea that individuals and brands have an opportunity that they've never had before to build out a subscriber base and an audience that they own the connection to.
There are no gatekeepers. So the upside of that is you can build this personal connection to your audience. The downside of this is that it's made the world go from noisy to what I call deafening. It also makes the news cycle itself very odd. So this is what's changed. The gatekeepers aren't there, and things now have this opportunity to become news. It's not just going viral. It's just that the gatekeeper's gone, and everybody has a direct access. Practically speaking, this means there's an opportunity before you to use this democratic access to this space to engage, to offer valuable information, to engage in dialogue. The challenge is that not everyone has the skills to do this tremendously well. So we have layman journalists. Something very insignificant or minor or trivial can push real news out of the spotlight or out of the headline. The upside of that is think about some of the good uses. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. It was outrageous. It was silly. It was visual. It also raised a lot of awareness and a lot of money. It is a two-edged sword.
In this media environment, we think what is most important for your listeners and others to think about is this idea of whether or not they own the media. So in other words, whether or not they own the real estate online. And so in the book, we separate media into three categories: owned, earned, and rented media. So owned media is every piece of real estate online and every media that you own. So your website, if it's hosted on your name, your blog, because it lives on that same website, your email list, because you own the connection to your audience through that email list. If you have a physical mailing list, as many companies do, that's owned media. The idea around owned media, as Barbara and I really look at the overall media landscape, owned media equals leverage in this media landscape. You own the connection with a large audience. You can reach them anytime you want. Rented media. So a lot of people that we hear talk about, their audience, they say, okay, well, my Facebook page, my Twitter account, my LinkedIn profile. And in some ways that's true. Of course, you've got a lot of control over what your LinkedIn profile looks like. You've got a lot of control over what goes out on your Twitter feed. But in actuality, you actually own that real estate. You're in many ways renting that real estate. And so individuals and brands should have a smart rented media strategy. But you always have to keep in the back of your mind that the audience that you leave on Facebook or the audience that you leave on LinkedIn, as opposed to consistently focusing on trying to convert them to your email list or owned media, is an audience that's always at risk.
What are your customers' needs besides your product? What can you provide them that A, distinguishes yourself, and B, delivers something that makes you memorable and different in their minds? And I think micromedia is a good way to do that. What do they need? What are they looking for? Answer those questions. Kind of what, it's what I try to do on our blog. I might interview a literary agent. Does anybody need a literary agent today? Who reads my blog? Authors who are trying to get attention. I'm trying to serve my audience between the times that they need my service. It's what you're doing right now. You're doing a podcast. You're making touch points beyond just, one initial impression. Micromedia really allows you to make constant impressions or to manage the relationship so that you are there with something valuable when you cross their desk in this very noisy, distracted world in which we live. Before you open up anything new or decide you have to engage in, 20 new activities, Start with where you are. Look at yourself, Google search, do a search engine shot on yourself and see how easy you are to find. You should be on page 1 of Google. So the first thing you do is find out how discoverable you are so that when people want you, need you, they can find you. To do that, buy the URL that's associated with your name. Make sure that all the bios that people can see actually reflect what you do today. Never sacrifice credibility. When you start representing yourself online, always be accurate, always be authentic. I just don't think that there's any replacement. Don't start creating an image that you are not comfortable with, that it is false. Just be who you are. Perhaps be a little larger or dramatic so that, it is seen. Maybe not dramatic's the bad word, but be more of who you are in larger doses. But always be authentic and always be accurate.
In this noisy media environment, the individuals and brands that provide real clarity for what their brand is have a huge advantage. You see a lot of people that are building out a micromedia outlet where it's not real clear kind of what value they're providing. There are people that own certain phrases or certain areas of focus, and I think branding and clarity around branding is hugely important. The other thing I would say in terms of future-proofing is not to put all of your eggs in any one basket. I see a lot of people that are incredibly heavy on their Facebook page, or the entirety of their platform is wrapped up with the fact that they have a Forbes column. And in a moment's notice, if you don't own the real estate, you've got to be really clear that could be taken away from you, or Facebook could make a change and limit access to your audience. So the more of the connection to the audience that you own through an email list, through subscribers on your site, etc., the more leverage you have over the long term.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.